Tonight, Liberal leadership candidates square off to land a knockout punch or to avoid one.
I will fight for you. I will fight for Canada.
I know how to manage crises. I know how to build strong economies.
The last debate before Justin Trudeau's successor is chosen. Measles cases have spiked in several provinces. What you need to know.
I think the message is getting out there, but not quite as effectively as we would hope.
And our CBC News series, The Cure, looks at solutions to the crisis in primary care.
We're seeing people slip through the cracks every day.
What provinces say they're doing to get you a family doctor.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrian Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. Liberal leadership candidates faced off in their final debate tonight, this time in English, as the clock ticks down on their race to succeed Justin Trudeau and become the next Prime Minister. Voting starts just hours from now, so every word spoken on that stage tonight was important. The contenders were Karina Gould, Frank Baylis, Chrystia Freeland, and Mark Carney. And the topics included Canada-U.S. relations, affordability, and securing Canada's energy future. So this debate, of course, came on the heels of last night's French language debate. Rafi Boudjikanian was watching him very closely. So, Rafi, Donald Trump and his tariff threats were once again a huge topic of discussion, but this was not déjà vu.
Adrian, the big difference, of course, was everyone was debating in their first language. So there were no real flubs tonight, and the tone was a little sharper.
Rather than guaranteeing the rules-based order, the U.S. is turning predator. And so what Canada needs to do is work closely with our democratic allies, our military allies. I've been foreign minister. I know how to do that.
In fact, a necessity, an imperative here for us to work with like-minded countries on the new security architecture. Yes, we have to step up for our contribution. How we protect our Arctic, which is under threat not just now from the Russians and the Chinese, but from potential U.S. incursions.
Maybe not a big argument, but a bit of a difference in terms of how Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney would approach tackling the problem of Canada not meeting 2% of its GDP spending on defense. So Carney says he wants to get there by 2030, maybe sooner if he can, but that would be a management issue. Freeland jumping in and saying, no, it's a problem of having the will to do it, and saying she wants to get there by 2027.
So, Rafi, another topic of debate tonight was affordability, hugely relatable, hugely important to Canadians for years now.
Yeah, you might recall it's the only thing Canadian politicians were talking about before Donald Trump became president. So it came up tonight so that housing costs, Mark Carney saying he wants to cut the GST for first-time home buyers, Freeland saying she would do the same thing, also reduce credit card fees. Now, these two candidates have dominated the headlines about this race, but tonight was a chance for Karina Gould, the former House leader, and Frank Baylis, a Montreal businessman and former MP, to stake out their positions.
Tackling things like homelessness and housing affordability actually make people's lives more affordable. That's the job of being a politician. It's putting the human face on policy.
And I'm going to bring fiscal discipline to Ottawa. And yes, we're going to have to stop running deficits. It has a direct impact on the value of our dollar, and that has a direct impact on affordability.
One difference from last night, the candidates attacked Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre throughout the evening today, and, that suggests they are aware that whoever wins tonight will soon be leading the Liberals against Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives in a general election.
Okay. Rafi, thank you. So, Chief Political Correspondent Rosie Barton, obviously also watching that debate closely. Rosie, right out of the gate, hot topic, Donald Trump, no surprise there, but what does it tell you?
I mean, it tells us that the Liberal Party is seized with Donald Trump the same way Canadians right across the country are, that this is really a top-of-mind issue for the country, and these leadership candidates realize that they have to position themselves, particularly if they're going to become the next Prime Minister, as best suited to take on Donald Trump. So there was about 30 minutes about Canada-U.S. relations where they took various positions about how they would deal with Trump's threats, but really the whole debate was colored and viewed through the lens of the president and the threats that he's making against the country, it was substantive. People had clear positions, slightly different ideas, and Rafi's right. They did go after Pierre Poilievre a little more than before. It did answer some questions in terms of being able to differentiate candidates a little bit, but it also demonstrated who really probably is better equipped or has more experience to deal with someone like the president.
So, Rosie, if I think about the French debate, it was pretty quiet, really. What's your sense of the quality of this debate versus that one?
There was still a lot of agreement, and that's because this is a family debate, is the way they've been framing it. So there wasn't a lot of talking over people and sparring, but there were pointier questions. Karina Gould was one of those who sort of stepped out of her own and pushed her colleagues to engage in a real debate of ideas. But if you were left with sort of impressions of people here tonight, Adrian, I think Frank Baylis, you would walk away thinking he's an outside of the box thinker. That Freeland, Chrystia Freeland, she says, I'm her own woman. I can take on Donald Trump. For Karina Gould saying she has the experience and the political chops to do this. And finally, Mark Carney saying that he's sort of the serious economist that can take on Trump and Poilievre. So a good mix of ideas and people, but now it will be up to Liberals to decide who wins this race in about 10 days' time or so.
Okay, voting starts right away. All right, Rosie Barton, thank you. Adrian. So our analysis continues in a little bit. We'll take a closer look at some specific moments in this debate and how a surge in Canadian pride could affect this vote as well as a federal election. Now in Washington today, more button pushing from U.S. media and lawmakers about Canada as the 51st state. As Katie Simpson shows us, it happened on a day when Canadians were pushing for smooth trade between sovereign nations.
Lured in by free Canadian swag, congressional staffers and some lawmakers were bombarded with Canada's anti-tariff message. About a dozen kiosks staffed by government experts to answer questions about fentanyl, the northern border, and immigration, a way to counter complaints made by Donald Trump.
How's it going? How's it going? Well, it's going. It's going. Hopefully in the right direction. We'll see. I don't know.
This is just one of several Canadian engagement events. On Capitol Hill, there are dozens of meetings planned this week involving diplomats, MPs, and cabinet ministers, highlighting Canada's $1.3 billion border security investment, hoping to convince the president to back off his tariff threat.
And I get asked the question, will it be enough? There's one person who can answer that question. But what I do believe Canadians can feel confident is that we are taking these requests very seriously.
Among lawmakers in the room, Canada's border efforts have been noticed.
We've got a couple little differences, but it's a sheet with a few wrinkles. So we're going to iron those out, and we're going to move forward because Americans, at the end of the day, absolutely love Canadians, and I think vice versa.
But even among some supportive Republicans, there's a lack of understanding of Canadian frustration.
The first thing you do is tell President Trump that as a 51st state, Montreal wants to be a 52nd state. Educate the fact that Canada is more complex than just our northern neighbor.
The thing is, those Canada jokes, they land real flat in Canada right now.
Well, and that's why I was dead serious. The fact that you speak two languages isn't missed by somebody who's been to Canada many times. I had factories in Quebec.
Thank you very much.
It comes as the pro-Trump media ecosystem claims government sources in Canada support becoming the 51st state.
They told me there is a path. Alberta is first, and if they sign on, Saskatchewan would follow, and then you go west to British Columbia. There is a movement in Canada to join us. I want to get your thoughts on that and how that's proceeding right now.
So it's true. Thank you, Brian. It's true.
Amid these tensions, the White House is clarifying that tariffs against Canada may not come next week. They're pending negotiation. Trump had said tariffs were on schedule, but the White House now says he was actually talking about reciprocal tariffs. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
After Donald Trump warned Volodymyr Zelensky he needed to act quickly, today multiple reports that the U.S. and Ukraine have reached a deal on critical minerals, something Trump has been pushing for. Here's Paul Hunter with what we know tonight.
With an apparent deal now all but signed, U.S. access to the mining of rare earth minerals in Ukraine in places like this could be the game changer that finally leads to an end to Russia's war on that country.
It's a very big deal. It could be $1 trillion deal, it could be whatever, but it's rare earths and other things.
As that war rages on, the U.S. under Trump has pressed Ukraine for access to those minerals, with the suggestion U.S. war aid to Ukraine will end if access is denied. Revenue from the minerals would be considered payback from Ukraine, demanded by Trump for the many billions in U.S. aid already given, a dramatic turnaround in U.S. foreign policy. But reports now of that agreement on the minerals and that Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky will fly to Washington later this week to sign it.
I hear that. I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly, it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me. And I understand
what's unclear is exactly what, if any, security guarantees for Ukraine are included, something Zelensky desperately needs to put pressure on Russia to back down. U.S. military aid is believed to be part of continuing talks as Zelensky gets set to meet with Trump. All of this comes at a fraught time for Trump and Zelensky, with name-calling,
a dictator without elections,
and Trump's false suggestion the war was caused not by Russia, but Ukraine.
You should have never started it.
Nonetheless, if a deal is signed, there remains that next step. What about Russia?
We need to have a deal with Russia, otherwise it's going to continue.
But Trump's view remains the war can be ended soon. Says he's talked with Russian President Vladimir Putin on this and says he thinks Putin also wants it all done quickly. As Trump now puts it, Putin wants to get on with his life. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Newfoundland and Labrador's premier says he is stepping down, the second Atlantic premier to do so in less than a week.
But now the time has come for me to return to my family and to the job that I love in the operating room, where I will continue to serve the people of this province in a different way.
Andrew Furey, who is an orthopedic surgeon, has been premier since 2020. The province is due for an election this year, but he says after speaking with his family, he can't commit to another term. He says the move is not a reaction to volatility south of the border, but that it did make his decision easier, describing the U.S. president like this.
I mean, it's clear, right? Like, the guy's cracked. I mean, maybe I can speak more freely now, but like he wakes up one morning and says something and water occurs. Tomorrow it's going to be on tuna, who knows? It's just, that's how erratic and confusing it is.
He also called Trump a bully and a maniac, so speaking freely indeed. Furey says he will stay on until a new Liberal leader is chosen. Well, Pope Francis remains in critical but stable condition tonight. Briar Stewart is in Rome speaking with the Canadian Cardinal at the Vatican with new insight into the pontiff's health before his hospitalization.
Amid the pouring rain, a moment of quiet reflection. In front of a statue of Pope John Paul II, a prayer for Pope Francis, who's been in hospital here for nearly 2 weeks.
I would describe Pope Francis as a man of the people.
The 88-year-old is still critically ill, but officials say his condition is now more stable. He had a CT scan and is still on oxygen as he battles pneumonia in both lungs.
What do you think is the effect?
Canadian Cardinal Michael Cherney was appointed by Pope Francis and last saw him 3 weeks ago.
He was having some difficulty breathing, you could tell that. Otherwise, he was his old self. He would take a breath in the middle of a sentence.
The Pope is prone to lung infections and has been hospitalized for several days before, including in 2023.
I'm sure everyone's holding their breath right now.
Elise Ann Allen is a correspondent with the Catholic news site and says the longer the Pope remains in hospital, the more conversations there will be about what happens next.
There is always one camp in the church that will say it is always inappropriate to talk about, the next pope while the current pope is still alive. But that is bogus because everybody does it all of the time. They've been having these conversations for quite some time.
Just not publicly, because for now the focus remains on praying for his recovery. The Pope's fragile health is one of the reasons why officials say it's so difficult to make a prognosis, but the Vatican says he's continuing to work from his hospital room, including approving individuals for sainthood. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Rome.
Cases of measles are rising in Canada, with more than 90 confirmed in several provinces. Jennifer Yoon explains why the latest outbreaks have health officials concerned and what they're doing about it.
In this southwestern Ontario community, a measles vaccination campaign to convince those who are hesitant. At least 68 people in the area are sick with the highly contagious disease. Officials say most of those ill haven't been vaccinated.
I think the message is getting out there, but not quite as effectively as we would hope.
Surge in cases is linked to community settings like schools and grocery stores, but most are being traced back to two events: a wedding in New Brunswick and a conference in Quebec. Attendees who had contracted measles abroad infected several people. They in turn went home and infected others. That has led to outbreaks in Quebec, Ontario, and Manitoba. Separately, there are two other cases in BC, residents returning home from Thailand.
You combine poor vaccination rate with a disease that is highly communicable, like measles. Really, no infection is as infectious.
The disease was declared eradicated in Canada in 1998, but so far this year, 95 people have gotten sick with measles. For comparison, last year there were 147 cases total.
This measles outbreak represents the largest number of measles cases that we've experienced in Ontario since measles was declared eliminated from Canada.
Now there are fears that the disease may re-emerge more permanently.
What I would like to see is that we stop these outbreaks in their tracks so that it doesn't become entrenched in the Canadian context.
There is no cure for measles. The only defense is vaccination. And with case numbers increasing globally and spring break around the corner, Dr. Tam is imploring Canadians to get that protection, especially before traveling. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Shareholders of Apple have rejected an attempt to scrap the company's diversity programs.
It's now becoming clear which companies had true commitment to DEI programs and which companies were just doing it for performative reasons.
How the changing political climate is driving the DEI backlash. Next. Plus, an expedition to the far reaches of the globe.
And it's going to let us learn about environmental changes that are occurring.
On board with the Canadian mission to Antarctica. And later, the American couple who picked up the tab.
I was getting choked up. Like I was, tearing up a little because I just didn't know what to say.
An act of cross-border kindness that caught an entire restaurant in Canada off guard. We're back in 2 minutes. Okay, a really close call on the Chicago runway today involving two planes. As this Southwest flight approaches the tarmac, a private jet, if you look just off to the left, crossed onto the runway. So that obviously forced the larger one to abandon the landing, though it did eventually land without incident. Officials say the private jet was not authorized to be there.
Breathe through your clothes, Nana.
And some scary moments on this Delta Airlines flight taking off from Atlanta. A smoky haze filled the cabin. The plane circled back within 11 minutes. 2 people were treated for smoke inhalation. And a similar incident Saturday when a Delta flight leaving Los Angeles for Australia turned back within minutes after smoke filled the rear galley. Well, tech giant Apple is keeping its DEI programs, and a number of Canadian companies have taken a similar stand. Their collective moves go against a growing corporate trend to abandon policies aimed at workplace diversity and inclusion. Nisha Patel explains.
At Apple's annual shareholder meeting, the hot-button issue of diversity programs was front and center.
These initiatives are discriminating on the basis of race and sex.
A conservative think tank proposed Apple should seize DEI efforts, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that are meant to provide opportunities to underrepresented groups.
We do see what we're doing as getting companies back to neutral. Make your commitment to hire the people that are best qualified to do the job.
While the majority of Apple shareholders voted to keep DEI policies, the push against them has been growing.
My administration has taken action to abolish all discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense.
Critics of DEI say it disadvantages white workers and divides people by emphasizing race. Supporters say that's a misconception that's been politicized.
Essentially, either you believe in DEI or you don't, and that is a signal of where you stand politically.
With a changing political landscape, big companies from across a range of industries have rolled back diversity practices.
It's now becoming clear which companies had true commitment to DEI programs and which companies were just doing it for performative reasons.
Here in Canada, hundreds of tech leaders signed an open letter urging businesses to stay committed.
Diverse teams perform better and are generally happier, and they increase profit margins. They don't decrease them.
Laura Gabor organized the effort, which called out tech giant Shopify for cutting back on diversity programs.
This is not what we think business should be in Canada, and I feel enraged. Frankly, I feel motivated to stop it.
The battle over diversity programs is bound to keep heating up as more shareholders are asked in the months ahead to show where they stand. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
A Canadian Navy ship is en route to Antarctica on a mission to study the effects of climate change.
Really spreading our wings and seeing how we can help support polar science as a whole.
Susan Ormison takes us on board the all-Canadian expedition. Plus, Liberal leadership contenders face off on the debate stage. We break down the key moments and what it means for the race to replace Justin Trudeau. And millions of Canadians living without a family doctor.
What we're trying to do here is to develop a better, quicker, reliable, safe way to identify competent physicians.
The search for solutions to a complex problem. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. Canadian Navy ship HMCS Margaret Brooke is on its way to Antarctica. It is supporting the first all-Canadian scientific expedition, and CBC News is the only media on board. International climate correspondent Susan Ormison brings us an inside look at this voyage of firsts.
En route to Antarctica. HMCS Margaret Brooke navigating through the southernmost tip of Chile. The landscape, a preview of the icy continent ahead, which is warming at an accelerating pace.
Dead slow, head both engines. Dead slow, head both engines.
An unprecedented voyage.
Ship's head 2 degrees of longitude. 430. 430.
This mission for the Royal Canadian Navy will be the first of any Royal Canadian naval ship to be heading as far south as we are right now. We're really spreading our wings and seeing how we can help support polar science as a whole, not just Antarctic, but Arctic science.
This is going to be like 1 or 2 extra hooks, right?
The Navy is hosting 15 research scientists from across Canada, Arctic experts who will work to unlock climate clues from the southern pole, which helps regulate our climate.
It provides this polar analog to the Canadian Arctic, and it's going to let us learn about environmental changes that are occurring in Antarctica and let us compare those changes to what we observe in our own Arctic.
The Margaret Brooke started this leg of Operation Projection in Punta Arena, Chile. To pick up the science team and wave the Canadian flag at the Chilean Antarctic Institute, signaling ambitions for closer collaboration.
It's a true polar collaboration.
Canada is a signatory to the Antarctic Treaty, which governs the continent, but it wants to be a stronger strategic player.
That is very important to have knowledge of both poles. There's a lot of things happening right now, and so it's very good that we are present here in the Southern Hemisphere.
Just Monday, the Margaret Brooke released its lines and, flanked by tugboats, left its Chilean port. For nearly 4 weeks at sea, an epic journey to the Antarctic Peninsula, still more than 2 days away.
Ahead of us, down there is the Drake Passage, a notoriously rough crossing. We're expecting waves of maybe 3 to 4 meters, so we are preloading the gravel tonight, Adrian.
I bet. So, Susan, what will the team be doing once in Antarctica?
Well, they all have different experiments, but essentially they'll be going out into small boats into the open ocean or the shoreline to measure change. So looking at the effects of climate change on receding glaciers, the movement of contaminants like microplastics or mercury down to this remote area and mapping some of the seabed floor. But instead of me talking about it, we are going to show you some of that gritty, freezing work in the days and weeks to come, Adrian.
Excellent. Thank you. That's Susan Ormiston on her way to the Drake Passage. Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. How to solve Canada's family doctor crisis.
Primary care makes people live longer, and it also saves the system money overall.
In a CBC News series, The Cure, we'll break down the innovative ways provinces are bridging the gap from Nova Scotia to BC. But first,
I have the experience, the plan, and the guts to stand up to Trump.
I know how to manage crises. I know how to build strong economies.
Liberal leadership contenders face off again in the race to replace Justin Trudeau in less than 2 weeks. Our panel's here to navigate the key moments. All right, so watching along tonight, pollster Shachi Kurl, journalist, former CBC Parliamentary Bureau Chief Rob Russo. So good to see you both. Rob, Mark Carney went into this as the front runner. Did he do what he needed to do? Did the others?
Well, he didn't dazzle, and he kept saying over and over again that he's not a career politician, and he showed us in many instances why he's not a career politician. But the only chance I think the others had was to really rock him, to stagger him, so that he left stumbling, and that didn't happen. So I guess mission accomplished for him. I thought the others, though, did well, particularly Karina Gould. I thought that she was pugnacious, and there was some real sting to some of her jabs. If she could have put a pocket protector and a beanie on Mr. Carney, she would have done that. Overall, not a bad night for the Liberals. They didn't give the Conservatives much in the way of ammunition to go after them either.
Okay, so we asked both of you to sort of pick a telling moment. I think we're going to start with yours, Shachi. We'll play it, then we'll talk about it. This is Karina Gould answering why she's best positioned to stand up to Donald Trump.
I know how to stand up to people like Pierre Poilievre, who, when it comes to Donald Trump, would rather imitate him than stand up for Canada. I know how to stand up to people who want to take from us what is rightfully ours. We are a proud, sovereign country, and as Canadians, we have so much to offer, but also the Americans depend on us. And you can't bring a calculator to a knife fight. You have to fight very strongly and with the right tools, and that's exactly what I'm going to do as Prime Minister.
Shachi, why that clip? Why Karina Gould?
And so that builds on what Rob just mentioned, showing herself to have some oomph, to have some energy. Tonight was really important for all of these candidates, in part because it's their coming out party. It's their opportunity to introduce themselves to Canadians. Last night was important in terms of doing that to Quebecers specifically, tonight to the rest of the country. And I say this lovingly, knowing Rob's listening. If you are on and live in the parliamentary precinct, and that is your life, then you already know who these people are. You've already spent a lot of time studying them, figuring out how they communicate politically, what their stances on everything has been, what their birthdays are. For most Canadians, however, this is the first chance they're getting to really kick the tires. And so from that perspective, we saw tonight a lot of energy from Karina Gould at a time when Canadians' own blood is up. You know, we're at a point where they're feeling angry. They're feeling really confused and anxious and concerned about the Trump factor. factor. And with the exception of what Mark Carney said at the end of the night about how he loved the country, how Canada has given him everything and he's prepared to give everything to Canada. We saw tonight Carney, someone really trying to burnish his managerial, steady, mature, sober creds. And I wonder if that matches the energy that Canadians themselves are looking for.
Rob, you chose a Carney moment tonight. I think it's one where he was weighing in on a debate on affordability.
Our economy over the last 5 years has been driven by a big increase in the labor force, which was largely because of a surge in immigration that is now trying to be controlled, and by government spending that grew over 9% year after year after year, twice the rate of growth of our economy. Okay, so our economy was weak before we got to the point of these threats from President Trump.
Why did that one matter to you, Rob?
Well, if you're trying to lead a party that's been in power for 10 years, you know that people are going to be looking for change. That's a really tough thing for somebody to do. Mr. Carney, as an outsider, has succeeded to a certain extent because he wasn't there. But he really needs to cement that impression with people that he isn't responsible for what's happened in the last 10 years, particularly with liberal conservative switchers. People who abandoned the party because they didn't like the way Mr. Trudeau handled the economy. And I think that was his attempt to try to underscore that he would be different, that he would have done things differently, and that he may not be leading the party of change, but he will be the candidate leading the party of change if he's elected as the leader. I thought that was really mission critical for him tonight.
Can we talk about Canadians for a moment, not politicians necessarily, particularly how they're feeling about their country? It's definitely changed. Shachi, you have the numbers to back that up. So let's bring in some polling data here. And check this out. We're looking at 10 percentage point increase in pride in Canada and in deep emotional attachment to this country from December to February. So what effect, if any, Shachi, are those numbers likely to have?
Yeah, and this is such a strong moment in terms of the Canadian psyche. I haven't seen anything like this probably since the first weeks of the pandemic lockdown, where you really saw Canadians in a moment of crisis pulling together and having that moment of unity. And we're seeing similar undercurrents and similar themes with the data that you've just laid out. Also, the 90% of Canadians who say, no, thank you, we do not wish to be the United States' 51st state. Find 90% of Canadians will agree on anything on any given day. Now, you asked, how does this matter, or what difference does it make in terms of the leadership race and also in terms of perhaps electoral fortunes more broadly in a general election? On the first, not so much. When you're dealing with an inside party process, the outcome is going to be so much more determined based on sign-ups and endorsements from MPs and who's got better organizers and who can pull their ranked ballot vote at a time when it matters. So maybe not as much at that stage. But in terms overall of the general election, it has really reframed what the ballot questions could be. Pierre Poilievre has spent the last 18 months, 2 years, really trying to put the boots into the Liberal Party based on the retrospective record of Justin Trudeau and his cabinet members. This is a completely new ballgame. We're talking about, we're into spring training and we're into a situation where now it's very forward-looking. And the question is going to be, who is best to deal with Trump?
Well, let's talk about Poilievre for a moment. Watching these Liberal debates, imagine you're him watching these Liberal debates. Rob, what's your takeaway tonight?
I did speak to some of the people who've been known to speak to him from time to time, and they saw somebody who was trying to make a virtue of not being a politician, but they saw somebody who was not a counterpuncher, who didn't respond to some of the jabs that were coming primarily from Karina Gould, and they believed that Mr. Carney will be mauled by somebody like Mr. Poilievre, who has an unerring and, it seems, irrepressible instinct for the jugular. We'll see. We'll see if that's what Canadians want. Right now, Shachi's surveys and the polls led by others suggest that they're looking for what Mr. Carney is in some ways offering, somebody who's very sober, somebody who's not really good at the cut and thrust of politics. But I think much depends on Mr. Trump. Will he continue to menace the sovereignty of Canadians and threaten tariffs that will cripple the Canadian economy? If that's the case, Mr. Carney's candidacy may remain viable beyond the spring snow that we're seeing right now.
Okay, good place to leave that. Rob Russo, Shachi Kurl, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, communities across the country are struggling with a common crisis: not enough family doctors for the patients who really need them.
We have a mountain of evidence that tells us that primary care is the most important investment that we should be making.
We'll break down the search for solutions and strategies next. Canada's primary care shortage means millions are living without a family doctor.
So it can get very costly.
Tonight, the first installment in our CBC News series, The Cure, the innovative ways health authorities are trying to solve the problem.
I think we need to be ready to try new things, measure them, keep the ones that are working.
Heather Gillis breaks down new and different approaches across the country.
Kristen Walsh knows firsthand what it's like not to have a family doctor. She's struggling to manage polycystic kidney disease, a rare type of arthritis, and ADHD, all without a family doctor. It means she's paying out of pocket to see a nurse practitioner a few times a month, costing $70 a visit.
I had a lot of edema, like leg swelling, so I was going like almost every week. And every visit is a subsequent cost, so it can get very costly, and it's also not covered by private insurance.
When you're sick, a doctor's office like this one is normally the first place you call. But 6.5 million Canadians don't have access to primary care. A new report from Health Canada estimates 23,000 family doctors are needed to fill the gap. And over the next 5 to 10 years, that number could grow.
Ting Ting Zhang is a researcher with the C.D. Howe Institute. She studies how the provinces are handling the doctor shortage.
It has been a challenge for decades for these provinces. So many of them are working on multiple strategies.
Strategies like reducing the administrative burden, expanding the scope of practice for other healthcare professionals, new payment models, and finding more and faster routes to practice for internationally trained physicians. Which brings us first to Nova Scotia. There are thousands of internationally trained doctors looking for a path to practice in Canada. Nova Scotia is launching a new way to get some of those doctors seeing patients.
What we're trying to do here is to develop a better, quicker, reliable, safe way to identify competent physicians.
Instead of relying on exams, the province is setting up a physician assessment center of excellence, first of its kind. Doctors already practicing in Nova Scotia are training to assess doctors trained abroad. Dr. Gus Grant says it will drastically cut the time needed to get internationally trained doctors working from 18 months down to about 12 weeks. The clinic will also see people without primary care. When fully functioning, it could add up to 40 doctors to the system every year.
We want to open the door as wide as possible to as many candidates as possible without lowering the bar of the necessary competences required to be demonstrated.
Dr. Andrea McCauley lives this care crisis daily, and it's why she signed up to assess internationally trained doctors.
I have been shocked over the years to realize how many good, capable, competent, fully trained physicians don't have a pathway to licensure in our province. I hope that the work being done in Nova Scotia can be replicated other places.
It may not be that easy, coast to coast to coast. Each approach is as unique as the terrain. The Yukon is taking steps to establish a new homegrown residency program. It could open as soon as 2027. Dr. Derek Bryant is the president of the Yukon Medical Association.
Essentially, the hope is that we would have the ability to train family doctors locally here because Currently, there is no option to do that.
Dr. Bryant hopes young doctors will put down roots and stay. According to a recent survey, the territory's medical association expects 40% of doctors there will leave or retire in the next 5 years. About 4,000 people are waiting for a primary care provider in Whitehorse alone. And as Yukon's population grows, a bad situation could get worse. To the south, the scenery certainly doesn't hurt. But British Columbia needs more than that to boost recruitment and retention.
This payment model for family doctors will help protect and strengthen BC's healthcare system by helping to attract new family doctors and retain existing doctors.
A new compensation model was launched in 2023 to bump family doctor pay from $250,000 up to $385,000. Rather than the old fee-for-service model, doctors are now compensated for time spent on admin work, charting their clinic load and the complexity of their patients.
Come on in.
The province says it's brought on 1,000 new family doctors since then. It's an investment Dr. Rita McCracken says can make Canadians healthier in the long run.
We have a mountain of evidence that tells us that primary care is the most important investment that we should be making in the health of Canadians. We know that primary care makes people live longer, and it also saves the system money overall.
McCracken, a physician and primary care researcher, says this new pay model is a start, but now is not the time to let up. She says the province must now focus on the number of clinics, not just doctors, improve its delivery of team-based care with other highly trained health workers to triage who needs to be seen fastest and first, which could connect more patients with doctors.
I think we need to be ready to try new things, measure them, keep the ones that are working, and drop the ones that are not.
That is the one common approach to finding a cure to the crisis in Canada. The provinces and territories are trying and learning, but for the people who need care right now, the cure can't come fast enough.
Meanwhile, Walsh, who's been waiting to be connected with a family doctor for years now, says she wishes this was a problem that was solved yesterday.
We're seeing people slip through the cracks every day that are not able to navigate their health without a doctor.
So, Heather, it's pretty clear that people without access to primary care pay a very real price. Unfortunately, that is not new. So what surprised you the most doing this?
Well, Adrian, what surprised me the most was just how hard it was to try to pin down the number of family doctors working in each province. Now, not all of them are doing the cradle to the grave care, longitudinal family medicine. Some work in emergency rooms, some do research, some work in specific areas of healthcare, and others work even in multiple provinces.
Is there an area in terms of what you've looked at where there's any reason for optimism?
Well, it's great to see some of the outside-the-box thinking that some of the provinces are starting to use. Now, the healthcare system, of course, in each province is a little bit different, and there's bureaucracy, which is often slow, as we all know, but there are strategies being tested, and some of them could be replicated, and some of them could be the cure or alleviate this healthcare crisis.
Yeah, let's hope so. All right, Heather Gillis in St. John's, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, amidst all the international tension, an olive branch.
Sarah said, oh, we're from Michigan and we want to pay for everyone in this restaurant today.
An American couple crosses the border with a kind gesture and an apology. Next in our moment. This unassuming but lovely little brunch spot in Windsor, Ontario, was recently the scene of a generous international gesture that made a big impact. So in the middle of the packed restaurant, an American couple made an announcement apologizing for the cross-border tension and then paying everyone's bill. Their act of kindness is our moment.
Such a surprising thing.
Like, this can't be happening.
Are you sure? No way.
And we were just getting ready to finish up, and the waitress asked for everyone's attention, and we all went quiet. Then the lady stood up and said that there were a lot of Americans who aren't agreeing with Trump.
Sarah said, oh, we're from Michigan and we love our Canadian and we want to pay for everyone in this restaurant today.
We just kind of stared at each other and said, like, did we hear that right?
Everyone looked around like, this can't even be serious.
I was in shock and I couldn't believe it. Everyone was cheering them on, like, thank you, thank you.
Our bill alone was $50 some odd, so I can't imagine with everybody else's.
It was $1,300 plus tip.
Brings me to tears, honestly. Everybody you talk to feels that tension. Everybody's worried about the tariffs, and this just gave sort of a few moments of release from that.
I was getting choked up because I just didn't know what to say. It was just such a feel-good moment. It made my heart smile a lot.
Man, these are good neighbors, and all we know about them is that their names are Bill and Sarah. They're from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And from all of us here, thank you for that. And from all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to The National's YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.